And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, ghouls and ghoulettes, to the channel for a mini-series in our Talking Tabletops podcast. Unlike some of the other episodes, we will be having some visual aids and background footage to see how that resonates with viewers on YouTube. It's also necessary because we're going to be doing something a little bit different. In this mini-series, I wanted to highlight the Fallout RPG, that is, the Fallout Tabletop role-playing game by Modiphius Entertainment. This is really a dedicated system utilizing the Modiphius 2D20 game system, and it's as unique and quirky as Fallout itself. This first episode is really all about a bird's eye view of the system and establishing a roadmap for what we are going to be covering, because there's really just too much for 1 hour-long podcast. And it will just be nice to sit down and really immerse myself in the system with all of you. So, without further ado, let's begin our system highlight on Fallout 2D20. The 2D20 system from Modiphius is a very unique take on a classic D20 based system. In this system, every standard roll still incorporates not just one D20, but two. If you are familiar with typical systems, you strive for nat 20s typically, and you kind of groan at nat 1s. Not here. See, the 2D20 system thrives on establishing a target number that you try to hit, or roll below. A nat 1 is considered a critical hit or a critical success, and a nat 20 is the critical failure. In practice, your rank and whatever skill check you have is the target number. The higher the skill, the more likely it is that you will roll beneath it. There are far more numbers between 1 and 15 than 16 and 20, for example. There's a lot more to it than that, but we are focusing on the Fallout iteration of this system. Beginning in this system, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with the production value on this core rulebook, it's just fantastic. For Fallout fans, the aesthetic is immediately apparent, and for fans of the Bethesda era of Fallout, the 111 on the back of this vault suit on the cover is immediately clear for the majority of the inspiration behind this system's design and aspects. Fallout 4 was a huge game for Bethesda Game Studios, and its systems for character creation, weapon customization, and settlement building lay a very translatable experience from the video game to the table. This should be noted because the weapons are pulled from Fallout 4 and even 76. The armor, the power armor, the outfits, it's lifted from the Fallout 4 era of the series, which means for new fans coming in from the Amazon series, things are going to look very familiar and act on some of the same logic. For example, in Fallout 1 through New Vegas, a player couldn't use power armor without specific training, which makes sense, but after that, the player moved like they were just wearing any other really good set of armor. In Fallout 4, the power armor became almost like a vehicle, but vehicles need fuel. The system reflects that. But moving on, this was the first Fallout game to allow different origins for the player. Not just different human backgrounds like a vault dweller or a survivor, but also ghouls, super mutants, and Mr. Handy robots. That was just the core rules as well. We're going to get into the expanded origins in another video dedicated to the expansions for this system, but I did want to go ahead and state that there. Much of the Fallout universe is represented in the rules for player expression, which is always a huge win in my book. Now, with all that said and this brief introduction over, I want to go over the book over the course of several episodes. So, strap in. If you have the book, please consider grabbing it in either print or in PDF form, and we're going to dive right in. So, grab some Nuka-Cola, pop some Rat away, and for the respect of Modiphius and Bethesda, I will not be showing much of the physical book on screen, and will not be reading the rules-heavy sections verbatim, though I may show a chart or illustrations from time to time. With the rest of this episode, I want to just pour over the introduction. It's pretty short, But let's become welcome to the Wasteland. The introduction of the book opens up and really does a good job of explaining the reality of things. This is the tabletop player's War Never Changes monologue. The United States of America is no more. They go on to explain that the world was destroyed in a nuclear war that ended the Great War itself and the civilized world. What remains is referred to as the Wasteland, which is an irradiated world which is pockmarked with ruined cities, decaying civilizations, and scattered pockets of desperate survivors everywhere. For those of us who are fans of the genre in general, or this specific series, we know this well. For newcomers, this can be some pretty heavy stuff, especially in our current day and age with the political climate. The text goes on to explain that in addition to survivors, the Wasteland is also inhabited by various mutated creatures, horrific beasts, and seemingly undying ghouls. The radiation from the detonations during the Great War spread incredibly quickly, and everything that wasn't killed immediately was irradiated severely. Most of what we know of the Fallout universe is limited to the former United States of America, and we know that most of the country's diverse plant and animal life was wiped out right along with the pre-war civilization. Those who persist, they work to reclaim what little there is left, and salvage what can't be rebuilt. Civilization has started to take root again, and as we see in the games and the show, certain areas of the country have reached a level of stability that might even be considered comfortable, at least for the rich and powerful. It's funny how little really changes, huh? As the communities have grown, they have laid the foundation for many factions to grow and eventually branch off and make their own way. And as these factions return to the Wasteland, it becomes clear that some are far more dangerous than others. Among these groups, there is maybe none more dangerous than raiders. They place no value on any human life but their own, or those of their gang, though I've seen raiders kill each other over chems or food or pride. Despite this, civilization has begun to flourish in the wastes. Trade, economy, and yes, even government have begun in some areas of the Wasteland. See, the communities have adapted or adjusted the concept of government to the individual needs of the people making it up. Merchants travel protected routes. They trade through different cities across the Wasteland. Over time, the merchants have created a new currency in the form of bottle caps, known simply as caps. Life is harsh here. The sun beats down hard. The radiation is still intense even after over 200 years later. Clean food and water are rare. Most survivors have been forced to adapt to dirty water and irradiated food, or darker appetites. Surviving alone is difficult, but living in a community also has its own struggles. There is a blurb along the top of this section titled "Welcome to the Commonwealth." As I stated earlier, this game in particular is heavily inspired by the concept and aesthetic of Fallout 4. It was the last mainline title in the single-player centered Fallout series, so the Commonwealth was made the default setting for the Fallout role-playing game. It is also, or at the time, was the farthest in the timeline we had before that of the show. This same setting was used for Fallout 4, and many of the locations, characters, and aspects of the Commonwealth are represented in the core rulebook. They are presented as a sort of start of the game perspective, or really even a bit before the start. This allows the Commonwealth to begin as a blank state before the inclusion and the disruption provided by the sole survivor from Vault 111. In fact, and this is just a personal thought, there is also a real argument to be made that someone could go through the tabletop system in solo play and just go through the events of that game with pen and paper. Otherwise, we can go back to the blurb They continue by admitting that exceptions to the blank state are made, and are often noted in the text if a place or a character is dependent on another event happening. For example, I haven't taken a look exactly, but Preston Garvey and his survivor friends may not even be to Concord yet. They could still be traveling northwest from Quincy. The setting is presented so that the Commonwealth can be explored, and players and game masters have the freedom to craft their own stories separate from the canon events of the game. Game masters familiar with the Fallout setting are encouraged to feel that they have the freedom to run games in other time periods or in other areas of the Wasteland, even if the core rules don't give depiction of those areas or eras. This would later be remedied a little bit with the most recent release for the system called Royal Flush, which is a prequel to New Vegas. But you can run campaigns in the Commonwealth, the Capital Wasteland, the Pit, Point Lookout, maybe even Nuka World, Far Harbor, Appalachia, including, West Virginia, but also Ohio from Burning Springs, maybe even Skyline Valley for wherever that is. I really need to play Fallout 76. You could even throw a campaign in California, set during the days of the heyday of the New California Republic, or maybe you're back east in Arizona with Caesar's Legion. Maybe you're playing in the Mojave, or maybe you go to a part of the country that hasn't been handled in Fallout yet. I hear that New Orleans is very popular, Fallout Miami, even Oregon for the New Frontier, maybe Texas, or as we could see in Season 2 of the Fallout show, there was a lot going on in Canada, maybe even Alaska. So the next section, labeled What Is in this book, details that the core rulebook contains all the information needed by players and game masters, which is something that I praise systems for, like Suede. You don't need a game master's guide, a player's handbook, or a monster manual all split up like this. Very similar to the way the Star Wars RPG from Fantasy Flight Games also handles this concept. All the information needed by players and game masters to begin playing the tabletop set in the Fallout universe is contained in the core rules. Regardless of the experience with RPGs, the book is designed to take players and game masters through the steps necessary to create characters and learn the rules of the game, as well as providing setting information and GM advice needed to get started. There's even an introductory quest. The Fallout RPG core rules state that the scope of quests possible in this system is, quote, endless. Maybe you want to explore the vaults and uncover the experiments that Vault Tech was running. Maybe you want to become a mercenary protecting on or preying on trader caravans. Maybe making the big time with enough caps and security to afford the post-apocalypse's attempt at luxury. Maybe players will bump heads with the Institute, or even meet the Brotherhood of Steel as they enter the region. Maybe you fight in the second Battle of Hoover Dam. Maybe you fight in the first Battle of Hoover Dam. Maybe you really define what exactly the Midwest Brotherhood of Steel is. Fallout Tactics, I'm looking at you. The TLDR is this: if you can imagine it, you can do it, which is the allure of all TTRPG games. This is where the real engine is imagination. So, what do you need to use this book? What do you need to use these rules? Well, you're going to need players and a game master, though there are ways to play solo. The Mythic Game Master engine, or even the upcoming variant of these rules made by Modiphius called Lone Wanderer. Though, if you're going to play with a group, either in person or online, groups of players usually considered parties in the TTRPG community space, the recommended size for this system by the game designers is 3 to 5 players plus the game master. The game master takes the role of running the game for the other players, establishing other characters, embodying those other characters, setting the challenges that the players might face, and shaping the plot of the campaign that the players will engage with, and then acting as a referee for the rules between the players and what they want to do and what the rules dictate the reality is. You're also going to need character sheets. Each player needs a character sheet to record their character's information. They help tell what makes you special. There are different character sheets aesthetically for different types of characters, but, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, it's not just aesthetic. There will be differences between humanoids and, for example, the Mr. Handy robot. These different character sheets can be found in either the back of the book or on Modiphius' own website as a free download. If you're going to be using printed sheets, the best policy is to fill them out with a pencil because your character information will change constantly. Alternatively, most systems these days allow for digital PDF versions of the sheets. Now, moving on, you're going to need dice. The Fallout tabletop role-playing game uses 2 types of dice. Pretty simple, right? These can easily be found online in your local gaming store or simulated digitally. The first are the titular 20-sided dices, or the D20s, and a regular 6-sided die called a D6. Ideally, going off of the system name, you're going to want at least 2 D20s per player, though sharing is caring, and if your dice situation is limited, you can share. It is never necessary to roll more than 5 D20s at once, and rolling them all at the same time helps you count them up rather than having to roll 2 or roll 1 and then write down what you get and then add it all up. It is also necessary to have at least 4 D6s. When the D6 die is used in this game, they are called combat dice, and they are shown as the Vault Boy head throughout the rules. There are custom dice made for this system, which can be found online through Amazon or on Modiphius' own website. Now, as of late February, these are sold out, so you may need to find one locally or online. These special custom dice are generally recommended. I don't usually spring for that unless it's a proprietary system like Vampire the Masquerade or the One Ring, which is a Lord of the Rings tabletop, or something like this, Fallout. This is recommended because the dice utilize symbols rather than numbers on many of the dice. They have different meanings, and it is usually easier to distinguish the symbol from the related number from a chart. Also needed are various tokens or chips. You could use a rock, a poker chip for the New Vegas fans, or, as recommended by the book to keep with the Fallout theme, bottle caps. I personally have been collecting bottle caps for the last 3 years to use with this system. These represent action points, or AP, and players of the games know this to either be 2 things. Either they determine what you can do in a common round of combat in Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics, or from the Bethesda era, these fuel the usage of VATS, which is the Vault Assisted Targeting System, and sprinting. If you don't have tokens or chips or caps, you can always write down on a blank section of your character sheet, though you will miss out on the tangible aspect of keeping them within arm's reach. Lastly, you're going to need some spare paper and pencils. In a game like this, you don't just want to write on your character sheet. Things are going to get messy quickly, and if you erase too much, you're going to wear out your sheet. Sometimes notes can save you better than a crit. You may discover information from the game master about a character or a place or a goal, or maybe you want to note things down about your quest as they happen. For example, we found the San Francisco sunlights by a lawn chair by a creek. Then we found them again underneath a storm channel on the highway. That's a reference for Fallout 4. Some players use paper like this, or even digital players can have a Word document or a note-taking app. Now, it's optional, but I think it's recommended. Now, once all of these materials are gathered together, as well as your own copy of the rules, because you will need to reference back, you are all ready to begin making your own Wastelander or prepare your table. That is going to be it for this episode of Talking Tabletops. Now, it was a little bit shorter of an episode, but when we come back, we are going to tackle the first chapter of the book, the core rules. This chapter is going to handle the concept of tabletop role-playing, skill tests, action points, and even luck as a stat. Ladies and gentlemen, wasters and raiders, I am so glad you spent some time here today talking about this great hobby. If you like this type of content where we deep dive into tabletop systems, then please consider liking the video. It really helps push my channel out into the algorithm. And comment down below. Have you ever played the Fallout tabletop, or are you just a fan of the games? Or maybe you haven't even played the games, but you're a fan of tabletops and you're brand new to the world because of the show. Regardless, I would love to know, and I'd love to welcome you to the Wastes. Subscribe, please, and ring the bell so you never miss another upload. And, as always, keep telling stories.